Welcome, everybody. Time to swim out into the waves and join the sales pipeline with your host. Hey, today we got a guest host sitting in today, Robert Pease. He's been with us before. Hey, Robert.
Hey there. How are you today?
I'm good. Well, we're trying to do this on the fly here. We had a guest that got sick at the last minute, so Robert said he'd jump in and come up with a couple of topics we could talk about today here. And I believe it's two words that I rarely hear. I often hear thrown together, but I seldom see executed right. Predictable pipeline. Is there such a thing?
There is indeed. At least that's what I'm going to speak to today. And great to be here. I always enjoy having the opportunity to do these things when Matt lets me grab the microphone, and great to sort of talk about this. Certainly timely as it relates to our own. Let me give you some insight today, kind of in how Heinz Marketing, we're a B2B sales and marketing consulting firm, how we look at our customers in our market and what we deliver to them. And so the lens on that is predictable pipeline, right? And so there's a lot of components to that. There's strategic pieces and there's some operational pieces. It absolutely is something that no one would disagree that they want. But I think that the reality is that it often becomes elusive, if you will, because of the pressures that are faced by marketers on a day-to-day basis, the salespeople, and their quotas. Sometimes you just you can't step back far enough and sort of say, look, let me build a methodical and systematic approach to doing this, so that everybody has, the same expectations, right? I believe that relationships, both professional and personal, are defined by shared expectations, and I think that's an important thing for marketers, VP marketing CMOs to have within the organization. One of my favorite quotes that came to me in one of various places I've worked over the years, one of the board members was sharing that they were talking about going to market and some of these things, and the VP marketing in the room said, look, I may be wrong, but I'm not confused.
I like that.
Which I think is a lot of this, right? Which is, there are sometimes, especially if you're making a bunch of assumptions or you're an earlier stage company or what it is, you don't know the outcome. You don't know if something's going to work. But that's okay, because you have to do these things to push the envelope or to break things every once in a while. But as long as you've got sound method and process and system behind it, and you don't go all in, and necessarily sort of fatally wound your organization by making a choice, I think that this is a really good approach to do that.
So I hear what you're saying, and it always resonates with me. Predictable pipelines and take risks and do stuff. Are those contradictory terms, the idea of predictability and the idea of risk-taking and try something new?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? And not trying to sort of, I guess, signal that. I think that the predictability of the pipeline has to be aligned with the plan. And as we engage with companies, or Matt and I sit down and talk through this with CEOs or business unit leaders or whatever it is, especially with VP marketing and CMO, it's like, look, have you built the marketing plan around the revenue plan? I mean, here we are. We're in the fourth quarter, right? We got 2018 ahead of us, and plans are coming together if they're not already framed out. And so there's probably a lot of revenue objectives, flowing around out there. And then the question is, look, if we're planning on being up 15% next year, and we think quarter over quarter we're going to grow at some percent, the only way to achieve that systematically is with method and process, right? And so this is not doing a bunch of things new, right? This is sort of figuring out where that white paper project fits within the stack, where your skill sets of your team and how they need to be developed and enhanced, potentially to take advantage of a new technology or a new technique.
So, to use Matt's favorite analogies, which are football or sports, if it's not grilling, it seems to be football or sports here. Is this the blocking and tackling? There's always the new Hail Mary plays or the new tricky plays you're trying to pull off that maybe nobody else was seeing coming that produce phenomenal results. But it starts with the basics, with the blocking and tackling.
Oh, absolutely, right. I mean, again, so you can see how many pithy quotes I can insert into this today that I won't reference because I don't know where I got them from. So if you listen to this and you know who the source is, please correct me. But I'm a big fan of, you plan the work and you work the plan.
Right. My father's favorite one.
A lot of this is just grinding out, right? Doing the right things in the right order for the right amount of time. And I've got, a client that I'm working with now, and we're sort of taking some shots into a market that we haven't been in before. There's very little to zero awareness of who we are, and we believe we're relevant. And so we're doing some things that are, designed to sort of build attention and awareness. And so that's content that shows up in places that our targets are reading. People that influence those targets are aware of who we are increasingly. And then there's just sort of the direct outreach that is what sales is, right? That's knocking on doors. That's email campaigns, and that's telephone, and that's, building a discipline around sales outreach within there. So this is, there is no sort of magic here, right? Or magic pixie dust. Often we wish we had some of that. And again, I think that, the best projects that we do when we sit down and we set expectations, right? Everybody wants results tomorrow. But sometimes that's just not, oftentimes, that type of sort of instant gratification is just not there, given complexity of businesses, given where markets are, given buying cycles. So I think that all of that is to say, look, if we start with a revenue plan and we know where we're trying to be next year, all of the things that we have, the resources, the activities, the projects, the investments, need to unify around that, which is the goal, which is then, again, to build a predictable pipeline.
Okay, so you talked about expectations. You enter into an expectation with your clients. We enter into expectations with our staff. What is a reasonable expectation? How do you not set the expectations unreasonably? How do you know what to do? Yeah.
I think it's and I've done this in several cases where, there's like, hey, come in, we really need to accelerate, basically we need more customers.
Yeah, everybody wants that. And we want them tomorrow, and we want a lot of them. And so then it's a question the staff says, well, we can't do that, or this and this, and there's all these reasons and excuses, and we can't do this. So how do you find that middle ground between aspirational and a real, as you say, a reasonable expectation?
Yeah, in some cases, right, you just go to numbers, right? I'm like, okay, here's the plan. Great. This is you think you're going to have 10 customers in October, 10 in November, 10 in December. Your sales cycle is 4 months, right? The deals that you're expecting and forecasting for revenue in October, November, December have to already be in your pipeline as opportunities. So anything we add to that is going to basically yield next year. Right. And so what happens is, again, I'm unemotional about the numbers, right? Even if they're scary or if they're wrong or if they're like doom and gloom, but you have to see that you now need to create 10,000 leads in the next 30 days.
Yeah, right.
Well, then that frames the challenge, which is like, okay, maybe that will be difficult, but then let's make sure that we've got the right tactical things in place to begin to build towards that, right? So it's, don't admit defeat immediately, but just sort of look at the scale of what you're trying to do. And it's surprising to me as we get into this and you begin to talk about, you do the math backwards from the customer count or from the revenue, and you begin to talk about conversion rates throughout the funnel, right? And this then gets into and unpacks things around lead and lead qualification. Someone who comes to your website and downloads a white paper, that's a content lead. That's not remotely sales qualified. And so if you don't look at it, they're important because that's someone leaning in, interested in the topic, interested in what you have to do. But that person's not going to convert into an opportunity in most cases without a handful more touches, right? And so it's just about being programmatic around that.
So much to unpack there. Let's go back to my first point here. Everybody wants to grow. And the people who own the company or the stockholders or the shareholders or the stakeholders, whatever you want to call them, they all want to see it grow as big as it can. Mm-hmm. And then there seems to be a pushback from the people who go out there and say, whoa, I'm all for growth, but hey, let's get real here. Let's go. We can't double in our sales next year. We can't do that much growth. And so there's this pushback, this negotiation. Should there be a negotiation, or should they just pick an aspirational number and shoot for it? Or should it have some basis in reality?
Yeah, well, again, back to you. There's a lot in there to unpack. And sometimes, expectations are set outside of the zone of responsibility of the person who's responsible for marketing.
In other words, are you setting yourself up to fail? If I just say, well, damn it, we're all going to double.
You want to be aggressive, right? And I think that if you ever make your number, you don't say, great, that was great, let's just stay right here. You're like, oh, wow, we made it. And so clearly we didn't set the goal high enough.
Right.
I think that as we get into this, and I'll go back to kind of predictable pipeline, and I'm going to talk about two areas, right? Strategic and operational. And there's the components that are in the strategic part of this are the market, are the message, the offering, right? Those are things that are foundational to success, right? If you don't know who you're selling to, and you don't know that there's a market or that there's a need in the market for what you sell, that's gonna wound you.
Yeah. Or if you don't sell a good service, you're not honest and say, we don't make as good a widget as the next guy here. Yeah.
Right. And so those things become, marketing as an investment in a business is an investment to scale.
Right. That's a good way to put that. I like that.
Yeah. When you throw capital at companies or groups within companies where maybe stuff isn't all figured out, what it's going to do is amplify all the bad stuff. Yes. Right. If you got it all figured out, it'll amplify the good stuff.
I always remember the story that I've quoted through the years. I read, this goes back a few years, but I think it was Planet Hollywood was opening up locations left and right. The problem was they were losing money every time they opened a location. But they're a publicly traded company who wanted to show growth. So their sales were growing, and so were all the problems. They were amplifying all the problems every time they opened a new store. They hadn't fixed the problem. They just kept adding to the problem.
Yeah, it becomes a little bit of a house of cards, right? That's exactly. Where you're like, hey, we're acquiring customers left and right. Look at our customer count growth, but there's a mismatch between what we're selling and what we deliver.
Right.
And what if those customers are churning out or canceling contracts within 2 to 3 months? And so you literally just have this, very leaky funnel.
Yes, right.
Those are metrics that aren't really core to the sort of creating value in the business, right? And so that's another piece of predictable pipeline is measurement, right? Which is, there are performance metrics that matter. We've gotten into this world now in marketing, right, where we've instrumented and we've got data and we've got numbers and man, sometimes you walk into organizations and they are measuring things that don't matter. From a step back standpoint. I mean, they're important. They're activity measures and they're whatever. But ultimately, this is about finding customers at attractive economics.
Yeah.
Closing deals that allow you to be profitable as a company, not overspending to acquire that customer that you can't get paid back within a reasonable time period. And it's not about MQL creation or whatever. It's about opportunities, right?
I thought it's about big data. It's about collecting as much data about every point in the process as we can. We need big data. I need more data.
And so herein lies right. And we have a lot of data, but even take attribution. So Brian Hansford, who's part of the team at Heinz, is working through and rolling out a service line around marketing performance management, and it's awesome. First and foremost, so highly recommend digging into that a little bit. But it attacks attribution. And that's just kind of a hairball, right? Because it's like,
hairball. I like that. You're coming up with some great terms here today. I got to cough that up.
When guests cancel, you get me and all my colloquialisms. But it's like, so sometimes organizations, it's like, marketing be like, oh, we closed a deal. Look at that. That's our customer. And then someone over on the sales development team is like, bull, right? I called that person, right? You created a white paper lead 6 months ago. They went cold and I did a call down. Yeah. So, really goes back to like, again, we got into this conversation with a client, which is like, I want to understand, marketing sourced revenue, right? Or marketing attributable revenue. And to me, in my mindset, back to the sort of scaling thing, is the marketing investment is designed to enable the sales process. So separating those, trying to say this is marketing sourced revenue and this is sales sourced revenue, to me just doesn't pencil.
Yeah.
Right. It's back to being well instrumented and dialed in and understanding. But if the marketing stance and posture is to enable the sales process, to remove friction wherever there is in the sales process, to deliver, right, and focus and accountability around opportunity creation, then you get a lot better alignment.
All right. Well, we're going to try and align this to something tangible here. We've been wandering through all the different hurdles and obstacles and objections. Now you're going to come back after the break and give us some strategic. And what's the other one? You had two terms.
Yeah, just strategic and operational, right? The operational thing I'll dig into next year.
All right. Well, let's take that on as a challenge right after we hear a word from our sponsors.
Is your content showing less than stellar performance? Is it not bringing in the return you hope for? It might be time to revitalize your content marketing engine. Get the recording for the Modern Marketer's Workshop, Content That Converts, and start creating content that makes a visible impact on your pipeline. A fully online, on-demand workshop that includes an interactive workbook, the presentation slides, and templates, all for $195. Don't reinvent the wheel. Instead, visit www.heinzmarketing.com/workshops. That's HEINZ marketing.com, and spice up your content marketing plan now.
All right, and after you spice up the content marketing, let's put it into a pipeline here. So go. You got 10 minutes here to tell us about pipelines and how to turn them into a process and predictable process here.
The goal of all this discussion is to do this, and again, it's not it's not something you pull out of a box and sort of set up. I think there's a lot of pieces to this. We talked about the strategic elements of this, but if you don't spend time on market, message, offering, right, the things that you're measuring, even your team and team structure, the amount of friction and process inefficiency that happens because of mismatched compensation and incentives is huge. Right. And it's important to sort of layer that in. People respond to their incentive plans, right? If my goal is to create leads and there's no real definition around that, I'm going to create a bunch of leads.
Amen. See it all the time. My goal isn't to make sales. My goal is to make leads. You go make the sales.
That's exactly right. And so I think that, and again, that this is back to people sort of, letting go a little bit and sort of unifying. Again, your job is to create opportunities. The reason there's an investment in marketing, the reason there's marketing staff, the reason there's marketing budget and programs and all that other stuff is to scale the business. So those strategic parts have to be dialed in, right, and have to be addressed and have to be confirmed. And if there's assumptions around certain pieces of that, this customer behavior, this customer need, you just got to articulate them. So then what happens is we can drop into operational pieces. And the operational pieces here, this is what we already do, right? This is programs and content and technology. But if you don't frame it around sort of strategic purpose, if you will, you end up with random acts of marketing. Right, you end up with
not random acts of kindness, random acts of marketing here, right?
Yeah, that's a Matt Heinzism, which I think is appropriate because then all of a sudden it's like, my God, we got to start doing stuff, right? We're behind. I'm like, look at this revenue plan. Holy crap, we're behind and we got to create all these leads. And then there's no sort of like unified plan around it, right? There's no method and there's no purpose.
The other one he says all the time that I love is the arts and crafts department. So we just call the arts and crafts department to make something cute, send it out, and they've done their job, right?
Right. And so this is where as we were taught, we did a workshop the last couple of days at Heinz, and we're talking about, perfect is the enemy of done. And so this notion of building sort of a hurry up, back to football references, right? Hurry up offense, right? This is a hurry up marketing that you can do. And so instead of a program taking 6 months to come to fruition, we can design something, launch something, and execute something within weeks. Decide whether or not it worked or didn't work and actually double down on it if it did. If not, then we haven't wounded ourselves by wasting all our money, and we move on to the next thing. And you can do that if you've got a good frame around the strategic pieces of this, right? So in the operational bucket are programs like lead gen, right? Events, inbound marketing, account-based marketing, SEO, social, inside sales, right? All these things that people do that a lot of times aren't sort of coordinated or unified. The whole notion of I was having a conversation yesterday with a company that they really thought they needed to increase their SEO, right? They want to be optimized. They want to be found. They have a very defined target market, right? They have a very defined set of criteria that defines a qualified opportunity, right? They have to have a certain profile. They have to be of a certain size. They have to have a certain software infrastructure for this product to work there. So optimizing to be found could potentially create a bunch of noise. Because if all of a sudden there's all this inbound interest because people are loving it, and you then have to qualify all that out, then SEO is not the place to be spending time. You need a much more disciplined as we've worked through this.
Wow, that's a fascinating, because that's when you just assume everybody wants more people to find them. Well, not if they're the wrong people finding you and wasting your time.
Exactly, right? So then you think about what account-based marketing is, or account-based everything, or whatever the phrase is these days. Yeah. That's just intentional, and that's a target. That's like, I only care about these 2,000 companies. Now, I want the people from those 2,000 companies to come to my website, but what I've done is I've qualified all my qualification criteria is in my targeting, right? Not between sales and marketing, and then there's going to be discussion of what's qualified and what's not. So the tactics that you're doing, unify those sort of programs and those tactics, but again, sort of driven by the sort of strategic pieces that you've got in place. And then again, part of programs and other pieces are content, right? I mean, everyone knows they need content, and then I see so many companies that just sort of get paralyzed because nobody can write. Well, there's a lot of ways to do content, right? You can certainly, hire someone to help you with that. You can do other things.
Do what we're doing today. Just talk to people and capture it and record it.
That's a very, very good point, which is if you're in a business and your business solves a problem, you arguably should know something about the problem. So just find outlets to share your knowledge of that problem. Right, and whether that's a conversation like this, whether that's go hire a copywriter and sit down and explain the problem, and they can put the words on paper, or hire a third-party firm to sort of do let's say do a study. We do this at Heinz all the time, right? We are able to do custom research where generally through like a sales or a marketing technology vendor wants to get sort of the pulse about a certain issue, and we can put that out there to our audience, and then people respond, and we get we're not a research house per se, but that becomes a really insightful body of knowledge because we have a very focused audience around B2B sales and marketers.
But what I'm still missing here in the last couple of minutes is how do I turn it into a process? How do I make it predictable process? Like brushing my teeth. My people do it every day just out of habit here.
Yeah, I think so if we line the strategic parts up, right, and then we know we have these sort of operational things that we do, and again, that's not new stuff that we're doing, it's just aligning it back in that.
Right.
To make it predictable is looking at the output, right, which is, are we generating more opportunities, right? Is the quality of the lead going up? What are our conversion rates? Are we actually increasing those conversion rates? I mean, you'd need to be, let's say focused, not maniacal, but focused on where in your process you can increase conversion rates. So it's not just lead to deal, right? There's all these intermittent steps, and if you can move a conversion rate from sort of cold contact to engaged contact by 2 or 3 percentage points, right? That ripples all the way down through the funnel, right? Or even if we take it from active conversation to opportunity, like figure out how the friction is impacting that, and so. What benefits is, it's quite possible that you're always going to close 1 out of 4 deals, right? 1 out of 4 opportunities closes. Let's say that's 25%. So how then do you focus on generating more opportunities? Well, what's the stage before opportunity? So that's about predictability, right? So what's happening is you're sort of managing this living and breathing entity, right? Which is your broader sort of demand generation engine, and bring that in there. And then a lot of this, I think, also back to expectations is to explain what you're doing and how you're doing it, right? Like it or not, most people believe they understand marketing. Most people have an opinion of that. You sit around a room, and of course, I don't have an opinion on accounting because I don't do accounting, but the accountant, the controller, the CFO certainly has an opinion.
That is a great point. Nobody sits around the table and says, I think I got a better way to calculate our deductions or something here.
Right.
But everybody in the room, from the secretary on to the CEO, has got an idea how to get in front of more people and get more leads and close more deals.
Exactly. Everybody's got an opinion on it. And so, we were in a meeting or a work session some time ago and kind of walking through similar sort of, okay, this is what we'll do, and this is how this sort of predictable pipeline thing works. And the technical CEO, engineering sort of focused person, like, yeah, we know all that. Okay, well then do it.
Yeah, right. Just simple. And I think that's the failure, because, and I'll say do it for 2 reasons. One, it's hard to stay with something on a predictable basis. It's hard to get into a habit of brushing your teeth every day. Once you do, it becomes easy, but it's hard to make it a habit. It's easy to get caught up in, I know we got to do this, but boy, we got a fire raging over here. We got a customer problem over here. We got a production problem over here, and everybody races to put out the fire, and immediately stops putting stuff into the pipeline here. Everything stops.
Super reactive, right? And again, this is like back to pithy sayings. If you spend your life running from risk, it's going to find you.
I never heard that one. That's a good one.
And so, like, if the revenue plan is far out ahead of what the demand generation plan can support, the longer you ignore that, the worse your job is going to be. And I'm not saying to go in and say we have to change the plan. I think it's just sort of shining a light on certain assumptions in certain areas that are like, well, here's the risk in our business plan, whether that's we think we can grow faster than we have shown historically, that we are we're not putting the resources in place to support the growth that we're expecting, and a variety of other things.
Well, and I think the other problem is not just making it predictable, not just making it a process, a habit, something people do no matter what the time of day, no matter the time of season, no matter what else is happening in the company. These are the things you're doing predictably every day to put stuff in the pipeline, to advance the pipeline, to make it like a machine, so it just keeps predictably producing output and results here. But the other problem I always say is that it's a linear process. So after all this effort, it's like the old Christmas tree lights when I was a kid. One bulb goes out and the whole light goes out. The whole string goes out, right? So one step failure kills 20 good steps of process.
Yeah, it can. I think that goes back to putting all your eggs in one basket, right? If you're just doing one thing, then the output is, or the outcome is binary.
Right.
Versus layer. This is why I think about it. I like layers of demand generation, and that's everything from how am I going to create awareness and surround a prospect, to how am I going to directly interact with that prospect, to how am I going to address the influencers that impact that prospect, how do I take my sort of unique knowledge that I have, whether that's, unique point of view, industry, customer viewpoints, whatever they are, and get all those things out there, right? So if we just did one customer case study and we put all our eggs in that basket, and it was like, we're going to write this up and we're going to email it one time to our prospect database.
And boy, is it going to produce great results here.
Right. That is an event as part of a broader process. And so the step back is we're going to really define and refine our message around customer success stories. The key takeaway, I always talk to companies about this. I'm like, you got all these case studies. Like, what's the headline? Like, what did they get? Did they save money? Did they make money? Right? Did they get an award? Those are the sort of tangible things that sort of come out of this. And then where that fits in the broader message is, okay, so what we want to do is we're going to do, a lead gen program where we're going to be featuring that case study. It's also going to include a webinar where that person's going to come. And so there's like this 3 or 4 touch type process. That's the systemic part of this.
You know what I learned today here? I learned that, 1, we can't tell this all in a half an hour. And 2, that we need help. As much as we think we know, everybody's got an opinion on how to do this. It's like the weather, but nobody ever does. Everybody's got to love everybody. Let's talk about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. We need to do something about it, and I think it starts with getting some professional guidance and help from people like you. So how do they find you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, so just go to the Heinz Marketing website, HeinzMarketing.com. My email address is robert@HeinzMarketing.com. We do this, right? We do everything from sort of advisory level engagement where we sort of help sort of at a high level all the way down to we do this for you, right? So even, think about outsourcing this engine. We've seen a lot. We've been in business 8+ years, 200+ B2B companies. A lot of the similar challenges across those, but we constantly benefit from an increasing pool of knowledge of our team.
All right. We're going to have to leave it there. We got another show after this, but thank you so much, Robert Pease, for talking about at least opening our eyes to the possibility of predictable pipelines. Thanks so much.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks.
You've been listening to Sales Pipeline Radio, brought to you by the good folks at Matt Heinz Marketing, right here on the Funnel Radio channel for at-work listeners like you.